Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something, well, pretty ambitious. Not just a career change, but a full-on identity transformation. Over a decade.
Yeah, it's quite a story. We're diving into the journey of Donald, an American-born Chinese, or
Yeah.
ABC. He starts out as this really introverted software programmer in Silicon Valley,
Okay.
and then he consciously decides, I need to change my entire personality. Pivots to product manager, which is all about communication, and then ends up as an entrepreneur in China.
Wow. Okay, so our source is this really detailed interview, right? It tracks this huge shift, Bay Area kid, to eventually settling in Xi'an, a tier 2 city in China.
Exactly. And the mission for you, listening, is to kind of unpack how someone can actually engineer their own personality, their career path, their whole worldview over 10 years. It's all driven by self-awareness and, frankly, a willingness to embrace massive change.
Geographic change, professional upheaval,
Mm-hmm.
the works.
Okay.
Let's get into it.
So you really have to start with his childhood, this feeling of being an outsider. Donald grew up in the East Bay, Northern California. And he said, despite being born there, he always felt like a foreigner or, other.
How so?
Well, he mentioned his graduating class was maybe 200 kids, only about 10 were Chinese American. So he was a very visible minority.
That definitely shapes your identity early on, doesn't it? And it sounds like his struggle was, well, pretty intense. He shared this really painful story from childhood
Yeah, the bullying.
about kids literally buying eggs just to chase him and throw them at him walking home.
Yeah. I mean, imagine that. That kind of thing makes you retreat, right? Find safety where people aren't the main variable.
Which explains the academics.
Totally. He was brilliant in STEM, math, science, physics, but things like reading, English, history, he just found them boring, even though English was his first language.
Interesting. He did choose Spanish over French early on, though, something he later thought might have been a missed opportunity maybe for a wider international view earlier.
Possibly. But that STEM focus led him straight to computer science at UCLA. Graduated class of 2008.
Oof. Right into the financial crisis.
Smack in the middle of it. And he talked about feeling real disappointment, even shame back then. Most of his top friends got into UC Berkeley, and he didn't.
So landing a job must have been tough.
He had to hustle. Sent out like over 100 resumes, finally got a software developer job at a sauce company. He actually felt lucky. Said something like 80% of his peers couldn't find work and ended up in master's programs just to kind of wait it out.
Right. But then comes the big realization. He's less than a year into this coding job.
And the self-reflection hits hard. He sees this vicious cycle, as he called it. The more he coded, interacting only with computers.
The more he avoided people.
Exactly. He even described like actively ducking and hiding to avoid colleagues when leaving work, just to not have that brief chat.
Wow, that's a really stark image of social anxiety.
It is. And that was the pivot point. He looked ahead 10 years and thought, do I want to be that person? Someone actually afraid to interact with others?
And the answer was clearly no. But instead of just, joining Toastmasters.
Right. He sets up this decade-long plan, a literal 10-year plan focused entirely on improving his social and communication skills, like an engineering project for his own personality.
That's incredible willpower. So how did he start?
Well, the first big turning point came from a mentor. The mentor suggested the product manager role, PM.
Oh, the classic developer to PM pipeline. But for him, it was about the skills contrast.
Precisely. He put it really well. Coding is eating by writing code, but being a PM is eating by speaking, running meetings, dealing with teams, reporting up, all communication.
He's terrified, right?
Genuinely scared of speaking in meetings. But he saw that fear as like the necessary ingredient for growth. He didn't just hope it would happen. He did his homework, shadowed PMs, really worked to land that role.
So he tackles the internal communication fear. What about the external world, the geographic shift?
That's turning point number 2. Came in 2010. He was working for a hardware company, traveled to their factory in Songjiang near Shanghai.
And that trip was significant.
Huge. He described this immediate, unexplainable sense of connection or kinship. Just seeing faces that look like his everywhere. A massive contrast to growing up in the diverse but minority context of the Bay Area.
Okay, I can see how that would be powerful.
So powerful that it sparked his second massive goal. He decided right then he had to live and work in China.
Despite knowing almost nothing about it.
Practically nothing. He admitted he couldn't even point out Beijing or Shanghai on a map at the time, which really shows how narrow his focus had been before that.
But he made it happen.
He did. Landed a PM role at Microsoft Beijing, lived there from 2011 to 2014. He said the job was great, but the real achievement was personal growth and getting his Mandarin up to speed.
And the worldview shift, you mentioned that was profound.
Oh, absolutely. This was maybe the biggest change. He started having conversations with Chinese friends who'd ask him things like, why is the U.S. always involved in the Middle East?
Questions he hadn't really considered from that angle.
Exactly. He'd only ever heard the U.S. media perspective.
Mm.
It forced him, really forced him, to realize he'd been kind of blindly supporting one side just because it was familiar.
So he had to step back, do his own research.
Look at things objectively. Stop just accepting the narrative he grew up with. He calls that realization the key step towards his life maturity.
That makes sense. Then he came back to the U.S.
Briefly. Joined Apple in California, focusing on the China market, but he felt restricted again, like being back home was somehow limiting the growth he'd experienced.
So, remarkably, he leaves again.
Yep. Second departure. This time, back across the Pacific to take a PM role at Google Shanghai.
And it's during these roles, bridging U.S. and China tech,
That he spots the problem he wants to solve. He kept seeing this pattern. Incredibly smart Chinese colleagues, brilliant engineers, designers, but they were held back by their English communication skills and, just as importantly, their cultural fluency in that very specific Western corporate environment.
and he had an analogy for this.
A really powerful one. He said these colleagues were like a bird stuck in a cage. They had the intelligence, the wings, everything they needed to fly high, but the communication barrier, the cultural gap, it just kept them confined, limited their performance.
That's a strong visual. And there was an emotional driver, too.
Definitely. He talked about hearing comments from U.S. colleagues, maybe not malicious, but questioning the capabilities of the Chinese teams. And it just made him feel uncomfortable, sad even.
Because he knew it wasn't about capability.
Right. It wasn't about brains. It was about communication.
Yeah.
And that crystallized things for him. He realized, hey, I have this unique perspective, these skills. I can actually help fix this.
So that leads him out of the corporate world.
That's the leap. He decided the problem wasn't just individual, it was systemic. He pointed to the Chinese education system, heavily test-focused. IELTS, TOEFL, you know the drill.
Creates great test takers, maybe not great communicators in dynamic settings.
Exactly. Students might ace the exam, but then freeze up when they need to actually speak, debate, present ideas in a fast-paced meeting culture.
So his solution?
Leave big tech. Create his own thing.
Yeah.
An education and consulting service. Focus specifically on building practical communication skills, bypassing that whole test prep mentality. He started using live streaming to iterate quickly on course ideas.
Smart. Okay, so where does he set up shop?
No.
He's lived in Beijing, Shanghai.
Right, those intense Tier 1 cities. He decided he wanted something different, a Tier 2 city. He ended up choosing Xi'an.
Xi'an, why there?
Few reasons. Logistically, it wasn't too small important when you're dealing with foreign ID paperwork and things. And he liked the North, the 4 distinct seasons.
But there was something more subjective too, right?
Yeah. He looked at GDP growth data, sure. But he also felt the people in Xi'an seemed more willing to learn, that they had this self-growth consciousness, which, he noted, you really can't assume is universal.
That's an interesting observation. And how does he structure the business legally? Education in China can be tricky.
Very astute. He deliberately labels his business as consulting, not education.
To avoid the regulatory minefield?
Precisely. Especially policies like the double reduction policy, which heavily restricted private academic tutoring. By calling it consulting for professionals, he kind of sidesteps those issues. It's a strategic move for sustainability.
Makes sense. And this intentionality extends to his own life now, work-life balance.
Oh, yeah. Completely different from his corporate days. He's now super strict about rest. Takes like 1 to 2 weeks off after every 7 or 8 weeks of intense work. A deliberate cycle.
Is there a catalyst for that? A wake-up call?
A big one. He described hitting a real low point after leaving Google. Life got chaotic. Poor health, eating badly, sleep all over the place. He realized he needed structure, boundaries.
Which led to his own personal principle.
His self-developed method, the 0-150 principle. He noticed his pattern was always extremes, either doing nothing, 0, or going all in, way too hard, 100.
Like running every single day until you get injured.
Exactly that example. We've all done that, right? Burnout City.
Totally.
So he realized the sustainable sweet spot isn't 0 or 100. It's finding that moderate healthy level, the 50% mark. You kind of have to overshoot first, hit that 100, maybe even get burned, to then dial back and figure out your actual sustainable boundary for fitness, for diet, for work.
That's a really practical insight. So looking back at that original 10-year plan, programmer to communicator.
He says it was a definite success. He admits he still gets nervous with public speaking, who doesn't?
Mm.
But his confidence is worlds apart from where he started, simply through relentless, deliberate practice.
And his overall feeling about the journey.
No regrets. Wouldn't go back. He feels like he's genuinely growing every year, which is such an engineering mindset, right?
Mm.
Always iterating on the design himself.
What about a time machine? Would he warn his younger self?
Interestingly, no. He said he wouldn't want to change the path, the struggles, because they led him here. His only tiny regret, maybe not leaving California sooner. He felt fear held him back, but realized leaving was absolutely necessary for the transformation.
So Donald basically treated his life like a decade-long design project to overhaul his personality and skills, starting from intense social fear.
Yeah, laid out a strategic plan and executed it.
Which brings us to the thought for you, our listener. Donald made this huge shift by picking one core personal trait, communication, and dedicating a decade to mastering it. So the question is, what single personal trait, if you truly prioritize it for the next 10 years, could most fundamentally redefine your career and your life path?
That's definitely something to chew on.